Hi everyone, it's the EnglishSimmer here, and this video was made possible through the Creator Network because I was gifted with early access to the brand new expansion pack for The Sims 4, which is of course Enchanted by Nature. This is of course my world overview. In these world overviews, I will be going over the, of course, brand new world of Innisgreen that comes with this pack, including every single lot that was included, and also the townies, their relationships. The enchanting Isle of Innisgreen is renowned for its natural beauty and vibrant communities. Sims from afar are drawn to the idyllic sprucederry grove, where foraging is abundant and life flourishes in harmony with nature. In the mystical forest of Everdew, the pursuit of fairy life and relationships offers enchanted experiences. Adventure awaits at the coast of Adhmor, where the isle's rich history and secrets unfold through its engaging residents and monuments. Innisgreen is celebrated for its development of the apothecary skill, attracting Sims eager to pursue careers in naturopathy and holistic practices. I will say this time around, even though the neighborhoods do have like points of interest such as the shipwreck and the ferry hub, they do actually feel quite small. I personally like the neighborhoods feeling that little bit smaller because it actually makes it feel like it is more alive, and I think obviously for a world that kind of wants Sims to get out of the house, they needed that instead of like a bigger neighborhood that meant that Sims could be dotted all over and it feels quite sparse. But it is made up of 3 different neighborhoods, 14 lots in total. There actually aren't any new lot types in this pack, but there is in fact one lot trait that is new to Enchanted by Nature. So the first neighborhood that we are going to explore is the magical neighborhood of Everdew. Home of the Fairy Council, Everdew is the epicenter of fairy life where fairies can let it all hang out. No, thank you very much. Please don't be like those zombies from 28 weeks later. Years later? I haven't seen it yet. Innisgreen's most enchanted neighborhood shimmers with a patina of magic. Overall, it's natural beauty. This is kind of your fairy neighborhood. I personally would have preferred this if it worked a bit more like Realm of Magic and you actually like had to do certain steps or like unfold something to be able to reach the fairy neighborhood. However, this is just like open from the get-go. You can travel here. You don't have to be a fairy to travel here. It's where you will find the lot in the big tree and also the Moondrop Springs, which I'm fairly sure is where you can start your fairy journey. The fairy hub, so you can find the fairy council, and also the teleportation stone, which actually gives you the option to teleport to both of the secret lots in the Sims 4 base game. Of course, you have Sylvan Glade and you have the Forgotten Grotto. This is actually made up of 5 lots. We have one 20 by 20, which is an empty starter home, one 30 by 20, which is a townie house. We have one 30 by 30, which is a lounge, one 40 by 30, which is a completely like empty residential. It has no home on it, kind of more for those rags to riches story living off the land with the natural living skill, and one 50 by 50, which is of course another townie home with some townies you may recognize. We are getting the Summer Dream household back. These were Sims from both the Sims 2 and the Sims 3. Obviously, they're continuing, unfortunately, with the alternative timeline of The Sims 4. It just feels very, very strange, especially when you look at this next to Life and Death, where obviously we got the precursor to Nervous Subject, and that kind of felt like it was a little more like Sims 2 lore accurate, I guess, although it was an alternative. Unfortunately, what I'm trying to say is Puck doesn't exist. They actually have another kid in The Sims 4. They have Mara. So having put down roots many moons ago, the Summer Dreams are Everdew's opulent high fae family. Notable couple Titania and Oberon struggle to navigate the challenges of parenthood alongside their emotionally tumultuous marriage. Oh my word, that was so hard for me to say. But luckily for them, fairies thrive on emotional happenstance, so at least they're well satiated by the drama. As for Mara, she anxiously awaits the day her wings will sprout and spends her afternoons fishing with her father or racing butterflies. Kind of giving you a glimpse at the fact that children will not have wings, neither will toddlers, infants, any of those younger life stages. Their wings will sprout when they actually become teenagers. I will say in The Sims 2, I feel like I only ever really focused on Puck, so it is a little sad that he is missing from this family. I honestly didn't really play with his parents all that much, but they do live in Puckett Hall, a fairy estate fit for high status. This chateau makes a prominent statement far beyond hefty household funds. Passed down through generations, it carries a versatility for both indoor and outdoor needs. Ethereal and elegant, there are no illusions of grandeur here. It is a stunning build. I will absolutely give it that. And this actually does have the new lot trait on it, which is Fairy Passage. This lot is near an enchanted passage fairy sims are more likely to visit, which basically just means you will have an awful lot of fairies knocking at your door. Next, we have obviously one of the sims that we did see in the trailer, and I'm fairly sure on the pack front cover as well, which sometimes they don't put the trailer sims actually into the pack. This time around they did. We have the mystical besties, a singles den made for two. Iris and Nadia have turned this house into a home. After a run-in outside of a fairy house soiree, these two became fast friends, with Nadia demanding Iris take up her spare room. Bonding over a mutual love for nature, enchantment, and a bit of disruption, these besties are embracing being young and finding their own mystical path, wherever it may lead. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Obviously, we will get into relationships and all of that later in this video, but I would just like to point out that Iris is in fact a woo-woo. Big up to the WLWs. They live in Bard Boulevard. Sequestered at the edge of the wood, this cozy plot of land is perfect spot for a humble abode with a not so humble view. Complete with everything a bard could need, such a whimsical cottage won't stay empty for long. Bards? Who knows? Bands pack? Maybe. Unfortunately, no new musical items in this pack. Then we have Cranamore Residential. Along the outskirts of Everdew lies this quaint home. Built into one of the largest trees in the forest, the breathtaking scenery is made more beautiful by the neighborhood denizens, who can be seen out and about using their enchantments on the world and sims alike. Not gonna lie, was a little bit worried going into this lot. Did potentially think it could jump around a little bit, but the tree works flawlessly. It kind of just disappears as you're rotating around the lot, and it flowed really nicely. I spent most of my gameplay living on this lot. Next is the watering hole. Resides in Everdew amidst a backdrop of green and blue enchanted hues. Those living off the land will have just enough to live off this empty lot. And finally, the Starsong Lounge. The ethereal vibes of the Starsong Lounge attracts unique sims from near and far. Locals are free to embody their true form and catch up with friends or make new ones. Come for the otherworldly ambience and stay for the drinks and music. I love the Starsong Lounge. I think this is probably one of the coolest builds we've ever seen. I don't know what's in the water, but I feel like everyone has been killing it with the lounges recently. Next up we have Sprucederry Grove. Is a haven for bohemian and nature-loving sims who love gardening, living off the land and mastering the apothecary skill. Nature enthusiasts flock here to forage among the picturesque trees and bathe in the tranquil stream. The neighborhood takes its name from the local legend, Spruce Almighty, of course a pun on Bruce Almighty, the community's loving garden pal. Now this is more your countryside neighborhood. This is where I fear we're gonna pick up on the Henford on Bagley maybe a little bit. However, there are multiple kind of like shells around and different, again, points of interest in this neighborhood. So you actually have the used bookstore where you can either sell your books or you can buy slightly, and I mean very slightly, discounted books. The plant shop where you can obviously buy the new indoor plants and pots. You have the spruce tree, which is obviously that tree with like the face in it, where where you can actually call upon Spruce Almighty. You can find Todd's apothecary stall here, and also a cheeky little fairy circle, which does have some interactions. I think it's in a specific kind of fable that you can do, but definitely has a couple of interactions in gameplay. And of course, a river running through it where you can fish on one side of it, and then you can also like bathe in it the other side. Sprucederry is made up of another 5 lots. One 30 by 20, which is an empty starter home. 2 30 by 30s. One of those is a bar, and then the second one is a townie home where townies already live. 1 40 by 30, which is the park. And finally, one massive 64 by 64, which is completely empty. It's a residential. There's no home built on it. Again, you could either have this for like a rags to riches scenario, living off the land like naturally, and then do it up yourself, or you can just like demolish that and build whatever you want on a 64 by 64 zoo lane. Starting off with the 64 by 64, this is Fern and Frond Wading Pond. This empty lot provides enough resources for those living off the land. The lush greenery provides a habitable environment that Sims can thrive off, but don't worry, there's also some local shops if you really need anything. Weirdly though, no like food shop here. Like you would think that that would mean a food shop, but the food shop is actually in the last neighborhood that I'm going to be talking about. Then we have the park, Whistling Thistle Gardens. Catching up with Sims at the Whistling Thistle Gardens is a favorite pastime of the Sprucederry Grove residents. This community garden has been carefully curated over the years to grow all of the residents' favorite harvests. Besides socializing and gardening, painting and photography are especially enjoyable here as the light and natural ambiance ignite creativity. We have Greenwood Hamlet residents. This charming village home is conveniently located within a hop and a skip away from local park, as well as the garden shop, Clover's seeds and supplies. It's an ideal starter home for Sims that want to practice their apothecary skill with access to the local stalls and shops. Again, this has the fairy passage lot trait. Next up is Gringles, which is the bar. Gringles has been the local hotspot for Sims to enjoy mixed drinks after a long day of mixing elixirs. Located near the center of Sprucederry, Sims come to take in the greenery and partake in delectable conversation. Now, while I will say I am slightly disappointed that we don't have like NPC bartenders in both the lounge and the bar. They're just kind of like fill-ins the way that you always expect kind of from bartenders, apart from like cottage living. I really wish that they had gone like high fantasy, you know, like D&D-esque, and had added some either really cool fairies to work behind this bar, or maybe like a different fae creature. I feel like they definitely could have maybe added some like tieflings. I don't know. I just feel like there was more that they could do with kind of the characterization of the public lots that you can visit in Innisgreen, especially with basically being able to do little fetch quests for people, which are called fables, where you get to know more about lore, and then also you receive items. In this setting, bartenders know everything. Like, they know everything about everyone, and they would have been such a good port of call for fable givers. And finally, we have the Enchanted lovers household. 2 lovers different from one another, built a path to be together, and now they share a loving home. Todd and Elric first bonded over their appreciation for nature and its many enchantments. They often spend their days lounging in the sun or foraging by the water, but not everything is picture perfect. Whilst Todd thrives in his apothecary business, Elric searches for a bigger purpose beyond a life of mixology. Unsure of his true nature, Elric contemplates if clipping his wings would yield more or less freedom. Only time can tell. And they live in Gimli Gardensbrook, a garden oasis filled with luscious greenery, placing residents on a hill they'll want to die on. on. Plentiful plots, gracious greens, and quaint carvings all give this storybook home 2 green thumbs. And the last neighbourhood of Innisgreen is Coast of Adhmor, a bustling seaside village filled with lore and history. The Coast of Adhmor serves as a tourist hotspot due to its colourful architecture, iconic landmarks, and coastal views. You can definitely see that they took inspiration from Kinsale, Portmeirion, if you are from the UK, Balamory. There are very, very colourful buildings in this like beachy coastal neighbourhood. It's based off Celtic folklore, has a very Irish coastline, obviously inspired by Giant's Causeway. There is actually a fishing shop here where you can buy fish, and I think you can sell fish from your inventory, kind of like the fish shop in Tomarang. Then there is also the guardian gnome, the big gnome statue that your Sims can interact with. You will find obviously the shipwreck, which you can learn about. So there is a little bit of lore to like interact with the points of interest. It will basically just bring up notifications whenever they try and say lore is involved. Usually in The Sims 4 that means you're gonna be reading an awful lot, so get your specs out. And then there is also a gnome stall where you can buy gnomes and also a couple of snacks from Glen. It is made up of 4 lots, 2 30 by 20s. One of those is a townie home, and then the other is an empty starter home, and 2 40 by 30s. One of those is the museum, and another one of those is the final townie home where someone already resides. Firstly, we have the Ladipo household. Despite moving to a more picturesque place, the Ladipo household still clutches onto their tech-based lifestyle. When the closest to gardening Flora and Ao get is watering their live houseplants, it's clear nature is just a beautiful backdrop to them. But live houseplants are not the only thing in need of extra care. A rift has formed within their family after their daughter Iris, so that is Iris who we met earlier in Everdew, moved out to pursue a more enchanted life. Burdened by this disconnection, the Ladipos must try to find common ground with their daughter or risk expanding their divide. And they live in 42 Normfair Drive. Just a stone's throw away from the coast centre sits a home with simple beginnings. With no need for flair, this place is perfect for any family seeking a modern touch amongst nature. Moving on to 1 Mary Shores Road, those looking for a short trek to the coast and some good old gnome vibes will love this charming 2-story home. Visit the museum or chat up the locals for the juice on the town's history with the Enchanted, all within walking distance. The second townie household is Gnome, the Coast of Adhmor's very own wacky waving non-inflatable arm flaming gnome man. Glen Gnome resides in this humble abode, surrounded by his personal collection of gnomes. Satisfied with his secluded lifestyle, Glen enjoys spending a good gnome word at Num Nums, woodworking, or crafting his latest professional piece of writing, which may or may not be gnome fan fiction. An elder in his prime, Glen is the kind of neighbor to lend a helping hand or enchant a gnome to do it for him. I like to think that he is a gnome that's been brought to life, hence why his name is Glen Gnome. And I think his fan fictions are actually stories about his life when he was a gnome. He lives in a gnome coast street. The scenic residence by the sea is perfect for anyone looking to house their hobbies. With plentiful space for gardening and crafting, there's no place like home. And lastly, the museum is the Nom exhibit. The Nom exhibit, short for the Gallery of Notable and Ornamental Miniatures exhibition, holds much of this coastal town's history and fascination with gnomes. The bones of an old lighthouse are still prevalent atop the museum, with grandiose views that can be a sight to behold. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to kind of use a computer a lot in the new career if you work from home, but there isn't actually a computer in this museum, which I am not a fan of. I always prefer them to kind of fit the lots around like the gameplay. No criticism to the creator of this build, but I think that should just be like the standard. There is also a grocery shop here in this neighborhood, but I will say I think this is my least favorite neighborhood. I like the way that it looks. I just just don't think there's that much to do. You can swim in the water like near the beach. You can also go fishing. But yeah, it's just a little bit lackluster for me personally. It has a bit too many shells that look like they should be something and then just like turn out to be nothing. On to the townies. Try not to get your hopes up for these townies. Even though you may love the Summer Dream household from The Sims 2, there's not that much interesting happening with the townies. None of them have sentiments with one another. They rarely cross over between households, which is super unfortunate. I always prefer it when townies are more like actively involved in each other's lives. But for Titania, she is basically friends with her family. I guess the kind of like lore that they kept is the Summer Dream like name and everything that is passed down, such as like the house, the wealth, all of that, all come through Titania. So she is the one who has like the lineage. Their names are obviously King and Queen of the Fairies, and this is also shown by their High Fae lineage. It gives them additional fairy experience game from all sources due to their royal lineage of the fairies. But apart from that, that's really all there is to Oberon and Titania alongside Mara. Now, I didn't actually play with this household, so I don't know if they maybe have gone for this kind of plot twist with their daughter, but considering the description said that she was like waiting on her wings, you know, when she's a teenager, she's fully expecting those wings to grow. I do think it would have been cool, and like I said, they may have done this, they might not have, but for a plot twist, if maybe she was a human. And obviously you can't really know that as a kid because she's just gonna have like all the human needs. She's not gonna have like the fairy specific need like her teenage version would. You can also just have no wings for fairies, which again is also kind of sad for her, I guess, even if she is a fairy, but maybe she doesn't get her wings. So you have a human form and you have a fairy form, but you can also just like hide your wings at any time. So maybe keeping her wings hidden, or maybe just not having that option in Create a Sim could be an interesting story for her. She does, however, have a fairy wing on her needs, which makes me think they didn't do that and she is actually a fairy. But you could still do the no wings. Whilst I do think Iris and Nadia have a pretty fun setup for, I guess, what their relationship could potentially become, because obviously you could make them lovers if you wanted to. For right now, they are just best friends. History will say they were besties, they were roommates, you know, so they kind of have that available to them as a story. Like I said, Iris is actually canonically romantic and sexual attraction to women within Create a Sim, whereas Nadia is open, you know, the default she is bisexual, as most Sims are, unless they want to tell a different story. However, unfortunately, Iris does not have any relationship to her parents whatsoever. Don't ask me why. Nadia is her only relationship. I mean, even if they wanted this to be like a drifting from your parents kind of story, I find it weird that they don't even have like a dislike or maybe even like a neutrality towards each other, because that means if you actually do play as this household or her parents, you're gonna have to introduce them to each other, which in my personal opinion is just weird. Like, I guess it kind of makes sense for a reconnecting story, but in a pack, honestly, with so few townies and a familial bond, and that family bond isn't recognized in relationships, it just feels a little bit lazy. I actually didn't check out her family tree though, so I will quickly do that and I will insert it so that you can see. Hopefully genetically they are actually her parents. Hopefully this isn't a Johnny Zest situation where he's not even acknowledged on the family tree. Oh, and also Nadia has beef with Joe Trader. Trader Joe? I don't know. Don't ask me. I wouldn't know that man if I saw him walking down the street. I barely interacted with him. I don't know what the beef is. Maybe they're exes, although they don't have like a negative romance with one another. Maybe he's just been a little bit annoying with Todd and Elric. Maybe it's just because they're like quite a new couple potentially, but they don't have a very high friendship with one another. They actually have more romance with each other than friendship. So maybe this is quite a new thing, which I actually think is a very like sweet representation. However, Elric does actually dislike Ao. I'm not too sure what that is about. He doesn't actually know Iris, so I don't know maybe if these two have a past with one another potentially. I could definitely see that happening, and maybe it just like didn't work out, but they have a dislike, whereas Todd only knows Elric, which again I find weird because in like a town this small and with him having a stall, you would expect him to know like other townies. Like he is a healer, he is a naturopath, so it's a little bit strange in my opinion. I don't think he has the official career of naturopath because he works in the stall, so he's kind of basically like an NPC. If you hop into this household, he won't be working on that stall, someone else will fill in for him. I've pretty much already summed up Ao and Flora based off the relationships that they have with other people. Neither one of them know Iris, and Ao is obviously has a mutual dislike for Elric, whereas Flora only has a relationship with Ao. She doesn't know anybody else. Finally, Glenn Gnome doesn't know anyone, which I know he has a stall, and I know it might be a little bit silly for me to say that I was offended that one stall owner doesn't know people, and yeah, I'm okay with this one not knowing anyone, but I feel like Glenn kind of keeps to himself. He's a loner, you know, he is definitely a gnome from a past life. He probably doesn't want anyone knowing his secrets, so I do imagine that he keeps himself to himself. Like, he'd have service with a smile. I would love this old man if I ever met him, but I do think people look at him and are like, ooh, he's a little bit eccentric. Maybe we don't get to know him. Is that a clone behind him? That's a little bit scary. There are also a couple of other NPCs. Obviously, you've already met Joe Trader through Nadia. These are actually NPCs that come into play with the Fable system. There is also like a fairy that you can get to know, and one of the fairy council like diplomats called Karen. You know? But unfortunately, those sims aren't actually even available in managed households. So you can't like see them in managed households. They can, unfortunately, I'm fairly sure, pass away and just like be replaced by people, kind of like the crumple bottoms in Henford on Bagley. And also Mother Nature and obviously Spruce Almighty are the same. You can romance Spruce Almighty and Mother Nature, but you can't actually like ask them to move in. I'm sure there are cheats to like go about that, especially because I know people do that with like Kylo Ren, I'm fairly sure, but just know that you can romance them, fairly sure you can woohoo with them, but you cannot ask them to move in. All in all, this isn't my favorite world we've ever seen for The Sims 4. The townies genuinely kind of take me out of it. I think the builds are absolutely incredible. I think the builds are amazing, which they were all created by builders in the community. And those builders were the incredibly talented Cracked Kyber, Nina Schmidt, Sandra Piker, and the Sim Scrolls. So big thank you to every single one of those builders. I'm not gonna lie, I say it every time, but builders blow me away. Genuinely, when I get to explore new lots, absolutely exquisite. I think the lounge is probably one of my favorite builds. I think that's probably the standout just because of like the use of assets is just so cool to me, and it feels like so otherworldly. I know that I said I personally prefer smaller neighborhoods so that they feel a bit more alive, which these ones did. There were always people wandering around. Like, you didn't struggle to find a townie, a plant sim, a a fairy, which by the way, if you're looking for fairies, Adhmor is not the place to be because magic is actually restricted in Adhmor. I obviously will talk about that a little bit more in my gameplay video. There are actually consequences for performing too much fairy magic in the neighborhood of Adhmor. So if you are looking for fairies specifically, definitely head to Everdew is where you're going to find the most. And I think they also fly around sprucederry. But with those smaller neighborhoods, there is a slight downside in the fact that there are more shells, and sometimes these shells kind of don't disappear, especially if you are a player who likes to zoom out a little bit more to like look at your lot, and when you're rotating it, the shells sometimes don't go transparent. So there's a little bit of like cutting off lots, but again, that's if you're playing like quite far out on like a high camera angle, which I just wanted to point out. I mainly noticed it in this video because obviously I was spinning around trying to capture the lots and what they look like. But if you're zoomed in, they work fine. Like I said, the tree one works flawlessly. The tree branches just kind of disappear and you don't ever really notice that you're living in a tree, even though it's a really, really cool lot. I just wish it were a little bit more interactive in a sense. Like, I know there's a lot of point of interest. There are obviously rabbit holes that you can go into. It's kind of like life and death in that way. I think a lot of this, it's basically the life and death world with like a new, obviously, environment and inspiration behind it. Like, you've got the inspiration of Island, which I love. I love that they chose Island. I do think it is time to move away from like European and American suburbia. We are long overdue like an African world and also like an Australasia themed world. Like, genuinely, it can be done with for at least a good few packs. But I just wish that some of this was like more secretive. I wish that there was like more to unfold like actually through gameplay instead of just like clicking on something and getting a notification about it and learning lore that way. I wish that there was maybe a separate fairy realm that fairies only could like interact with, kind of like Glimmerbrook and the realm of magic. There's just a little something missing to me. It feels very basic. It feels very cookie cutter for The Sims 4, but that's my own personal opinion. I would love to hear your thoughts on this world, the builds, the townies, everything that I've spoken about in this video. I am hopefully going to have my gameplay overview either up later this evening or potentially tomorrow at some point, and then my creator sim will follow either the next day or, you know, in the next couple of days. So I'm gonna have all my main videos up. I'm also gonna try and uploading like a couple of shorts and a couple of TikToks. So if you can, please also go show your support over there. I'm gonna be giving like tips and tricks and stuff over on shorts. My username on all platforms is just EnglishSimmer, so you can go check me out wherever I may be on the internet. But yeah, I appreciate you all so much, and I will speak to you all in my gameplay overview, which should be coming fairly soon.